As you know, I'm Robin Miller for FOSS, and we are with David Burr Graham, who is a member of the Canadian House of Commons, which is like being a congressman, except their country is much larger than ours, of course. It is. Not so many people, but much larger. So it's much more influential. And for many years, he worked as a news editor on the Linux.com website, and he is a Linux user for a long time. And David, how did you get into Linux?
I first used Linux in 1995 on the high school computer science club's Slackware server, which is a 386. And the bug bit. I was given a Lynx web browser long before anybody else had a web browser. I was learning how to use Telnet. I was a text mode guy from the beginning, and I loved it. I've been using it ever since.
And you still use Linux?
I still use Linux. The computer I'm talking to you from is a Mac, but everything else I have is a Linux machine. I have 2 Linux desktops and a Linux laptop.
No, I meant Lynx, the browser.
Oh, I still use Lynx even today, yeah.
Okay, I don't. I used to.
Yeah. And W3M was just too far ahead of its time for me, so.
Well, but now, you're there.
I don't use Lynx so often, but I still script because it actually helps my work, and Lynx is really good for that.
Okay, so how do you go from working as a contract news editor for Linux.com into the Canadian Parliament? Is it like you walk over to the Parliament and they say, hey, I have experience with Linux. I want to be a minister?
Not exactly, but not that far off. People who understand technology in politics are a rather rare breed. So when I left Linux.com at the end of 2008, I'd already been volunteering in election campaigns. I was already the data director for some campaigns. And I showed up in Ottawa and I said, I want to work with the Liberal Party because I've always been anywhere where technology and politics meets.
Okay.
And so they said, you understand technology? Great, come with us. And so I started doing all kinds of technological programs. I got thrust right into the back end of our party database with a database administrator who's been doing it for 15 odd years. I understood the material. I was able to learn it very quickly. And I was able to meet a lot of people very quickly. I ended up working for 4 members of parliament simultaneously as an assistant. I'm doing mainly technical work. And then I joined the Justin Trudeau's leadership campaign team on his database team. So data is what I did. And then after the leadership campaign was finished, I wanted to run back at home where I grew up because I thought it was the best way I could continue helping and serving. And so I ran using, again, my data knowledge to figure out how to run a campaign in a place that we hadn't won in 30 plus years.
Okay, so you actually could type your voters out pretty well, right?
Pretty much.
And you won.
Yeah.
Just like that. At what age?
I won at 34. I started my campaign at 31. It took me quite a while to run the campaign. I started in the summer of 2013. I won my nomination, which is the equivalent to a primary in the US in 2014, and I won the election in 2015.
Okay, so wow. So, and what do you figure the average age in the House of Commons is?
I would say it's in the mid 40s. It's actually a fair bit younger than some of the legislatures. I'm not even in the youngest 10% of our MPs.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, in the United States, as I think you know, the average is 150 years old in the House of Representatives.
In base 8.
Well, no, I meant base 10. I mean, but I'm being silly here. Oh, yeah. People realize that David is one of those people who does understand base 8 and does those silly Roman numeral jokes you see on Facebook.
Absolutely. Well, that's to say, 1 is run politics, 2 is ... 3 is you win. Or profit, as it's in Facebook. Yes. That makes sense to me. It's on /, rather. That makes sense to me.
Yes, and these red slash dots since the beginning, more or less, as have
more or less, yes.
So there. And does any of this help you in Parliament?
Yes, it does a lot because technological knowledge is fairly rare in politics, and that's not just a Canadian problem; that's an everywhere problem.
Yeah.
And one of the big issues we have in my riding, which is my jurisdiction, and that we have in most of rural Canada, because my territory is quite large. It's about the same size as Vermont. Is internet access. So in rural Canada, internet access is quite poor. And so I am the co-chair of the Digital Infrastructure Caucus in the Liberal Party of Canada and the founder of the Rural Caucus, which are two very related files.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues I work on is internet access. And having the technical knowledge means I can call bullshit when somebody tells me what their solution is, because I actually understand what they're telling me, and I know that it's true or isn't true, and I can work on solutions that will actually work, and not just somebody who's paid to tell us it'll work.
Now, since I know this is endemic in the U.S., do you get people who try to bullshit your government on IT matters?
Yeah, plenty. I'm not involved in any of the decision-making processes, but I can see how things work. That there's sort of an assumption that people in government don't understand technology, and we can tell them whatever we want, and they'll believe us because they pay us a lot. And I don't think it's a very healthiest solution to technology in government.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you something else, kind of here. Are Canadian politicians in general smart enough to keep their personal and government email separate?
I would say so. We have I think pretty much all politicians in Canada have a personal email address, and pretty much all politicians in Canada have their government one once they've won. Partisan stuff goes to personal, government stuff goes to government, and there the twain shall meet. And it's not rocket science. I think most people understand that.
I know. I find it troubling that people who have a lot of money, earn substantial salaries, can't keep their mitts off of, a married couple can't keep their mitts off of each other's laptops or share one or something. My head burns up. And this is not, I don't think, a single party problem. I've known many people in both parties in the United States who are completely inept with computers. What about Canada? Is there a partisan difference in that?
I don't think so. I mean, a lack of technological expertise transcends party lines.
But is it becoming more important in the 21st century?
To understand the technology?
Yeah.
Well, it's absolutely important. And we keep talking about a paperless society. And if a paperless society is where we want to get to, then you got to give up your paper. And if you want to give up your paper, you've got to go to technology. If you want to go to technology, you have to understand the technology and learn the technology and use the technology in a real way.
Okay, how about open source? Do you get any open source going in Canada and the government?
Not as much as I would like, that's clear.
Okay.
I would like to see open source taken serious. And one of my great favorite examples, and I think I've said this in the House of Commons, is as a staffer, because I worked on the Hill for a number of years before becoming an MP, I wanted to install Firefox on my computer.
Oh my!
In the office, and I was told by the security department that I'm sorry, that's not secure enough. Only Internet Explorer meets our security standards. I don't think I need to tell you how much that made me both laugh and cry.
Okay. And did you ever get Linux on your office computer as a staffer?
No, I was never able to get Linux on my office computers in any way, shape, or form. I was able to get Firefox on there because their security system is such that it's really not hard to circumvent.
So you were an underground outlaw.
Yeah, and I've taught many people how to do that as well. It's really not rocket science.
So wait a minute, you're not in the pirate party. You're in the Liberal Party.
I'm in the governing party, and for me, installing Firefox on my computer at work, I think is a fairly fundamental basic right.
And I don't know if you can say this and get reelected, but you have Firefox on your computer now?
Yes, I do.
And you admit it.
I admit it, and every once in a while, the XUL runner says that the version has been upgraded and therefore it won't run, and I have to reinstall it. And that happens about every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Boy, I bet that's fun. Of course, I when I use Windows, which I do for video editing, I use a program called Classic Shell so that I
Yeah.
deal with the horrors of Windows 10 and the interface. And every time there's a Windows update, it says, oh, no longer useful. So I have to reinstall it. But proprietary software is what it is, you know?
That's true. And I'm not able to install Chrome on my work computers. That's far more secure, apparently. But Firefox, no problem.
Okay, well, I'm using Chrome right now, just so you know.
I am at home, just not at work.
Oh, okay, just checking. Now, are you not the only Canadian parliamentary minister of parliament? Are you the
I'm not a minister, I'm just a member.
the only member of parliament who has ever quoted Douglas Adams in the chambers?
I don't know if I'm the only one who ever has. I'm probably the only one who ever has. But as a member of the 42nd Parliament, it was an opportunity I could not resist.
I remember I heard that speech. That snippet was pointed out to me by someone else. Another Canadian, a gentleman. Oh, you know him, Bruce Byfield.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes.
Our old colleague.
Yes, and a gentleman who wrote a beautiful book about designing with LibreOffice.
Mm-hmm.
And a fine writer who we admire much.
Mm-hmm.
And despite his being Canadian, do you feel that being Canadian is a handicap?
Not in any way, shape, or form.
But you don't have access to the world's greatest, finest, hugest medical system, do you?
Well, actually.
Well, no, I thought America's everything was the best.
Well, I don't believe I'd be the first one to point out that Americans' cost per citizen for healthcare is about twice that of Canadians.
Oh, so you're saying you guys are at the same cost level as the U.S. Veterans Administration?
Something in that neighborhood. I don't actually know their number, but it's likely. I mean, when you have
it's about half of the typical. It's about half.
Yeah. When you have a nationalized system, you have the economies of scale for real that the insurance companies claim to have.
And do you use open source in it?
Open source for my healthcare?
Well, I mean for this.
I haven't got that many bugs.
I mean for the government.
I don't use open source in government in any particular way, other than that I still have a Linux machine at home, which I still use to code things which help me.
Would you like to?
To use open source in government? I'd love to. I would love to have, if we put the money we're putting into proprietary software across government into in-house development of open source software, you can imagine the technological powerhouse we'd become.
Are you working in that direction?
It's one of the many items on my priority list. It's a fairly long list.
Do any of your fellow members know or care?
Remarkably, quite a few do.
Really?
But they were at executive level. They were not at coding level. So they understand the philosophy, but not the technology. So,
okay, but they're receptive to the.
They're absolutely receptive. Like I said, there's a fairly young parliament. Average age is quite young. So people do understand these things. They do want to learn more. And our digital caucus is one of the largest sub-caucuses in the Liberal caucus.
Your digital caucus?
That's right.
You didn't found that, did you?
I co-founded it, and I'm the co-chair. Yeah.
Oh my God! You guys use OFTC? That's the Open Free Technology.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm the only MP ever to IRC from the floor of House of Commons. That's a different story.
Oh well, you are. See, people, this is the thing. You let these Linux guys into your government. See what happens. Next thing you know, they're on IRC. from the floor of your chambers of government.
You
Now,
got to go from somewhere.
how do we get other infiltrators like you into other governments, including the one between what is undoubtedly the finest country, if not in the world, at least between Canada and Mexico, mostly between Canada and Mexico, the finest country there. How would we elect more people like you?
Well, I guess more people like you would have to hire more people like me to help them grow up in the field.
I can't.
Because if I hadn't worked for 4 years, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, but there's other people who've worked.
There are. I don't know why technologists generally tend to avoid politics. Because if you've ever been on a Debian mailing list, they can get quite political.
Yeah, folks, this is a, so you know, this is a former secretary of, or what was it, secretary or treasurer, both of software and the public interest of Debian.
I was secretary for the public interest because one of the co-founders of OFTC, and that's how I got into SPI.
Okay, and folks, this is a, so you remember, this is an elected office, so he had training in politics, and yes, Debian is cutthroat.
I have, anybody who can survive a Debian flame war can survive anything politics has to throw at you. It's nothing by comparison, truly.
So what about those women that you were grabbing? And that videotape we have?
What's that?
But don't we have a videotape of you grabbing at women and pawing them or something?
Oh, I highly doubt that.
Oh, maybe that was somebody else. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to separate different politicians. As we know in the United States, you guys are all the same. Except you're our guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm talking about this in the context of FOSS, free and open source software. You're our guy. You're our rep.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't work for open source. I believe open source works for us. And open source is a real viable technological solution for government. And governments everywhere need to hear that message.